Deebo Samuel. He's been,
Okay.
the target of a lot of criticism since the thing that happened with Tabor Pepper and Jake Moody. He goes up to those guys, tells them to do better. They win, and since then, Deebo really hasn't produced. He's at like 97 yards in the last 4 games. People have been asking him what's going on. He hasn't really had much to say. And then yesterday on Twitter, he goes out and says he's not struggling, just not getting the ball. A lot of people criticize him, and he deletes the tweet. Came out today and spoke a little bit more about it. He's an easy target right now, Dad. How do you feel about what's going on with Deebo?
He is an easy target. And the other thing he did was he said last week that they're better than their record.
Oh,
The
yeah, he
record
did do that.
doesn't show how good it, which is a very unsophisticated juvenile thing to say. And I've made fun of him. And then Iggy, say again what his tweet was.
I'm not struggling. I'm just not getting the ball.
Okay. My initial reaction to that was, what a selfish guy.
It's not
What's
about you.
It's not about you, and it isn't about him.
Yeah.
And the fact that he would go over the coach's head and make this public is self-interested and selfish. But then I thought about it because I've been around Iggy hundreds of athletes, professional athletes in his position. And here's what I think. I don't know him, but this is from experience what I think is going on with him. There comes a point in every professional athlete's life. I'm going to use him, but it could be her. But we're talking about the Niners, in which a man begins to feel that he can't do the things he used to do. It's an impossible thought to have because you could always do those things. It's not only that you could do them, it's who you are. It's not what you do, it's your identity. Deebo's identity is that he's a really talented wide receiver. And if you get in the open field, try and stop me, try and knock me down. He is a team leader who makes a lot of money. And people like him, when they begin to not be able to be that anymore, it's very scary. The athletes call it the little death. That part of your life is beginning to die. And they begin to make excuses. It's not me because I'm the same. I'm the same as I always was. There's a reason, and the reason is outside of me. And the reason for him is he's not getting the ball enough. Now, it sounds selfish, but it's what he needs to tell himself. If I got more passes thrown my way, I'd be Deebo Samuel. But for some reason, the passes are going to Kittle or they're going to Jennings. And I don't know why I'm not getting him, but if I get him, I'd be Deebo Samuel again because I'm always Deebo Samuel. And part of what I admire about that mindset is one of the things that makes an athlete great, and Deebo was great for a short period of time, is that he has utter belief in himself. What he still has, he no longer has the physical ability, but he has the utter self-belief that's never going to leave him. It's part of what makes him him. But now it may be not operative anymore because he can't do the things. And we're watching the little tragedy of the little death where he's can't come to terms with who he no longer is and tries to find explanations outside of himself. And what I want to say is, I look at it in certain ways and it makes me want to giggle, but more deeply, it makes me feel for him.
Yeah.
I don't put him down. I've seen hundreds of great athletes go through this. And Iggy, we never in our lives had to go through it. I could always be a writer.
Yeah.
I'm 79 and I'm still a writer. No one ever said to me, when you reach 40, you're too old, Lowell. Your verbs aren't as active as they used to be. I think I'm a better writer than I ever was. And Iggy, doing what you do in your platform, I think you're better now than you were a year ago. And you're 36 years old. So you don't have to face what Deebo is going to face or what Joe Montana had to face or what Trent Williams is going to face very soon. And it's hard.
And I think I'm going to look at it from another perspective, from Kyle's perspective, or from the organization's perspective. I mean, he's making a lot of money. He's declining. This offseason, they might need to cut him, and that'll be tough. But right now, they need him. Like, they have this playoff game against the Rams on Thursday, and Kittle's great. Jennings is great. They need Deebo. Like, that's they have. One wide receiver right now is Jennings. If they could get Deebo to step up, that would be huge. So you heard Kyle and George today say Deebo's going to have a big game against the Rams. It's interesting. Like, you can't say he needs to take a step back. He needs to understand his role. Like, they almost got to pump up his ego. And I wonder, you don't want to go it's a balancing act. You don't want to give him 10 targets because he hasn't earned it. And those need to go to Jennings and Kittle, but you need to have him engaged. So maybe on the first drive, you make sure that a throw goes to him. And if he catches it, you keep feeding him. If he struggles, go to Jennings and Kittle because they're locked in. But it seems like you got to go to Deebo early in this game and just see what he's got.
I love it. And the point is, you want to make him feel good about himself so he catches the ball and it doesn't go through his hands. That's right. You can do this. I can do this. So if there's any shadow of a doubt, he doesn't have it. I want to give you an example from years and years and years ago. Jim Lefevre, who used to be a coach at the Giants and at the A's, when he was at the A's under Tony La Russa, one day Canseco walked by, and Canseco, he goes, "Oh, you're the man." Jimmy says to him, "You're the man, make a muscle. Let me see that bicep. You're terrific." And then Canseco smiled and he goes away. And Lefevre said, "See, he's a superstar, Lowell. What you got to do is you got to feed his ego the whole time. You've got to make him feel great about himself. So go out and hit a home run." And that was his psychology. You just say, "You're the greatest. Let me see that bicep." And that's what they need to do with Deebo this week.
Didn't Bill Walsh have the same philosophy with Jerry Rice?
He was different. Bill had trouble praising people. I mean, he really did. And I think he had a fraught relationship with his dad. And I don't think his dad ever praised him. He sometimes said when we were alone, very critical things about his father. So I think his father didn't praise him. He couldn't praise other people. But there was the one time we were at Oregon State. When I say Stanford was at Oregon State. I was writing a book on that team. And Bill, he liked to talk. So the guys were getting dressed, and he sat down next to me on a bench. And he said, "You see all the guys getting dressed around here?" I said, "Yeah, Bill." He said, "I used to secretly watch Jerry Rice getting dressed before a game." He said, he didn't know I was watching. And he would put on every article of clothing immaculate. His socks, his shoes, the little towel that he put in. And he said what he had to feel perfect to play perfect. And he was a warrior putting on his battle gear. And he said that would motivate me when I would watch Jerry get dressed like that.
I see what you mean. Like someone like Bill Walsh, who had some of the highest standards of all time in the NFL, looks at Jerry Rice and says, "Oh, this guy might even have higher standards than me. Like, this is inspirational."
That's what he meant. And so that was how his mind went. But for him to go...
And with Jerry, it wasn't just how he played on the field. It was every single thing he did.
Because he couldn't play that way if he hadn't dressed that way.
Right. Of course.
Dressing that way was part of playing that way. And Bill...
And his identity wasn't just being perfect on the field. It was just being perfect.
That's right. He was perfect. Yeah. And Bill, who was, God love him, very insightful about people and articulate and brilliant, understood it and loved it and needed it. So it's different from building up Deebo this week. I don't think Bill would have built him up. One time, Steve Young told me, he said, "It's funny to play for Bill. It's funny, Iggy. They used to tell you all kind of stuff. Now you forget it. It's a different profession now." So I was talking to Steve. It was like lunchtime, and I said, "Does Bill ever praise you?" He goes, "No." He said, "What happens is we'd go out to practice and they'd give us mimeograph sheets on the plays we're going to practice." And he said, "Lowell, they were hot. They just came off the machine. Steve was so cute. They were hot. You could smell the ink. And we'd go over it and we'd do all the plays. And Bill would say, okay, we did that. And then he'd get more mimeograph sheets and they'd go on to other exercises. And Bill never said, good going. He would always say, okay, let's move on. Never praised him. So Steve had to praise himself.
All right, I want to come back to Deebo before we move on. I love what you're saying, giving him grace. Heart goes out to him. Absolutely. At the same time, the Niners have to be careful not to make this week in this game about him.
I agree. No.
And I think that's my one issue with what he did is his heart's probably in the right place. And as you said, a lot of athletes have gone through this and it doesn't make him, I mean, he's not alone. But by making it public, I mean, Kyle talked about it today. Kittle talked about it today. Everyone's writing about it. It's kind of the thing hanging over this game. They didn't need it. Yeah, they had a very positive win against the Bears and they didn't need anything to taint it. So they can still beat the Rams, but Kyle and the team have to be very careful not to make Deebo's personal struggle overshadow a must-win game. And they got to win this game by any means necessary. If that means throwing the ball to Jennings 30 times, and that's what they got to do. They have to react to who's good that day.
Iggy, I 100% agree with you. So let me be clear. When I was saying nice things about Deebo, I'm saying I understand where he's coming from, and I have empathy for him. But I don't think he did the right thing. Yeah. I think when people are thrashing around because they're beginning to lose their ability, they do weird things, and they're things that don't help the team. This is not Deebo week. This is the Rams week, and he shouldn't have done it. And I noticed, Iggy, I'm not aware of what Kittle said, but I did see what Kyle said, and he tried to get around it. He said, Deebo and I talk every day. This is no big deal. That's why I don't look at social media, because stuff like this, as if it were the fault of the media that Deebo had done that. No, it was the fault of Deebo that he had done that. And Deebo put the coach in an awkward position where he had to talk and dance around as hard as he could, dance around what Deebo had said. If I were the coach, I would have told him, could you knock it off? This is Rams week. It's not about you, and you put me in a bad position.
Well, the thing is, Deebo deleted the tweet, which makes me wonder, maybe Kyle did say that. Like, hey, man, I hear you, we've talked about this, but this got to stay in-house. Or Deebo understood himself like, I don't need to do this.
Iggy, how long was the tweet up?
A few hours, 3-4 hours.
Okay, I'm not there. I don't know any of these people. My guess is he was told to take it down.
I would guess that too.
Now, I can't prove it. I'm not asserting. I'm saying my educated guess is he was told to take it down, and he understands why.